If you want this podcast free of ads, follow us now on patreon.com/David McWilliams.
What in the world is happening on Wall Street?
Economic indicators.
Who knows where this is going to end up?
To understand the economy, you have to understand human nature.
This podcast is powered by Acast.
How you doing there? Podcast time. I'm here with John. What's the crackhead?
Oh, the crack's mighty, as always.
We're nearly out. And we're jabbed.
I'm jabbed. Got my first jab.
Yeah, but you're Astra, aren't you?
Yeah, and I hear that that's only 30% efficacy for the new Indian variant. I believe.
Well,
I don't know.
Everybody is an expert, John, now. You know that.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I got the Moderna one.
Yeah, how was that for you?
That was great. Very modern. It was great. Anyway, but we're going to be out quite soon, which is kind of thanks be to Jesus.
Yeah, I just want to go back gigging and pinting. Actually, speaking of gigging and music and stuff, I've heard Lucy
has a new track out with her mate Matthew Harris, who you described last summer as, look at your man with the head.
Because he's got a grey head in him.
No, what happened was John was sitting here, legs crossed, listening to Bruce Springsteen up in the kitchen. And one of Lucy's mates, Matthew, who she's just done a track with, who goes by the name of Chameleon, is his stage name, arrives in with peroxide hair in the garden. Yeah. And John goes, who's your man with the head?
He's a lovely fella, actually.
He is a lovely fella.
It's a great track.
Actually, we play out with it.
We will.
Another thing that was interesting to me this week, John, was, of course, Bitcoin and crypto in general. You know, what is actually going on there? And what I did the other day was I just had a shout out on Twitter. And I said, look, you know, can I have a few recommendations of people in Ireland who can talk to me about Bitcoin? Loads came back. One of them who came back is a guy who people suspect could have been the originator of Bitcoin, right? And we're going to talk about Professor Donal O'Mahony. He's a computer science professor at Trinity.
Right.
And the people in the know believe that there's about 10 people who the internet regards as potentially being this anonymous character, Satoshi Nakamoto. Right. And he's one of them, an Irish guy. So we're going to talk to him in a little while. But the reason we're talking about it, John, is it's a huge story. Bitcoin, where's...
That's Sasha, everybody. Mac's old dog. Poor old Sasha.
Yeah, she needs to get out. Come on, go. Actually go. It's a tickety-tick on the floor. Okay. I'm going to talk to him in a minute, but I mean, the story is huge. The Bitcoin story is huge. The crypto story is huge. What's happening to currencies? Are we going to get hyperinflation? Are we not going to have the stuff that I like, the MMT?
Well, it's big in the news now, so it's with the Elon Musk debacle and all that kind of stuff.
And also what I've noticed as well is it's a generational thing. You know, lots of young people are really into crypto. Yeah. Lots of younger people of our age are a little bit skeptical, but younger people are quite into it. So
these are the cyberpunks.
As opposed to the doggy punks, scum punks, who used to live in the catacombs.
Yeah, that's right.
Many, many years ago. I remember going to see the Clash in the SFX many years ago and trying to pass myself off as...
It's been cool.
I was the least cool man in the swatty pants seeing the Clash. And finding myself just kind of getting sucked into a kind of a mosh pit with those Dublin scum punks and thought, I need to get out of here. Very, very quickly.
You would have been such a target.
Exactly. Channeling my inner Joe Strummer, which was never there in the first place. Anyway, let's go and talk to Donal O'Mahony. Now, in 2009, we're going to talk Bitcoin, but we're not going to talk Bitcoin with any old Bitcoiner. We're going to talk Bitcoin and crypto in general today with a man who is rumored internationally to be number 7 on the list of who actually is Satoshi Nakamoto, the man who is, or the person or the company, the entity who actually originated Bitcoin, kicked it off, started the whole thing. That was 2009. We're now, 11, 12 years later, an extraordinary frenzy of activity around Bitcoin. But I want to go right back with Professor Donal O'Mahony of Trinity. Where did it start? What is Bitcoin? Give me the flavour for crypto in general, and then we can take it forward. Donal, how are you?
Hi, David. How are you doing?
I'm in flying form. Now, what does it feel like to be one of the people internationally rumored to be the man behind Bitcoin?
Yeah, so the quest for who is the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto has been going on for a long time now. I guess one of the reasons how I got involved was I've been an academic in Trinity in computer science, professor there for over 30 years. And I guess my main focus has been computer networking, cryptography, and the things that cryptography enables. So payment was a huge focus. So coming up to the time when the internet was becoming less of an academic thing and more of a consumer thing, the web was launching. Myself and two of my students were working a lot on payment type projects, how to affect a payment across the internet. Actually, the vision of the internet back then could have gone one of two directions. It could have gone the way it has gone, which is an advertising model where we're all being advertised at by Facebook and that's paying all the bills, or we could have done it with payment. We could have paid micro amounts for every piece of content we consume. In any case, it went the other way. So at the time, we had lots of different payment methods that we were looking into, and we wrote a book on the topic, basically on how you use cryptography to make payments and to hold account across the internet. One of my students at the time, Mike Pierce, was working on a thing called the Pay Me Transfer Protocol, and that was quite close to the thing that Satoshi invented. And I think that's hence how we got put in the frame.
Well, it's not bad to be roped in as the inventor of Bitcoin. This second only to be appeared on the Dave McWilliams podcast in terms of fame and fortune. But look, okay, excuse me, what is Bitcoin?
Well, what Bitcoin set out to do was to find as a way of paying one person to pay another with a coin across a network. But the key thing about Bitcoin that's different from all the other payment methods is that you don't need anybody in the middle. So typically if I'm going to pay somebody with, let's say, a credit card, I go into my local SPAR or whatever, and I want to make a payment. Visa's getting involved, AIB's getting involved. I have to instruct the bank pays somebody else. So the cool thing about Bitcoin was this, and was really the beginning of what people are calling today decentralization.
Now, what is decentralization?
So decentralization is where you take the center out of things. So rather than everybody going into some central hub that mediates all the transactions.
Like a bank, for example, in this case.
Like a bank, yeah. Or if you're trading stocks, like a stockbroker. If you're doing insurance, like the insurance company, between you and the people covering the risk. So anything that involves one person interacting with another that needs to be mediated today. So this is the sort of promise of so Bitcoin did that for payment. It allows me to pay you without anybody else getting involved. And then it also gave birth to this whole blockchain idea, which is all about doing lots of things without a mediator involved.
Now explain to me blockchain, and then I'm going to ask you the question. If Bitcoin was originally started as something in order to increase you and I trading together, why is it traded so little? That's what intrigues me about Bitcoin. If the objective was to make trading easier, how come so few things are actually traded on Bitcoin? So let's park that. But I want to come back to the blockchain idea. Explain that to me again.
Well, so, if we were engaging in a mediated payment, there would be somebody who is essentially keeping a book, and they'd have a column that says, here's all the payments that David McWilliams has received. And there'd be another column saying, here's all the payments that Donald O'Mahony has made. And you'd be matching those things.
Sure.
So the idea of the blockchain then is to basically take that ledger and capture it in a digital form.
Okay.
Now, normally you need the bank to maintain the ledger. You need some trusted third party who's going to look after this ledger. In the blockchain idea, you get rid of that. So you take the ledger and you replicate it out there on thousands of computers around the world that are all sort of maintaining a consensus about what's in that ledger. Okay. And that's the sort of magical thing.
And so that's the sort of holy grail of the new idea of crypto trading, that you take out the middleman, the producer, the consumer, the buyer, the seller, the punter, the other punter, get closer together. And you take out kind of waste, and you take out fees, and you take out transaction costs. And there's where, in a way, the sort of the economic potential is. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so that was the original, and I think that who knows what was in Satoshi Nakamoto's mind, but I think that was part of this cyberpunk movement, which was a whole lot of people who wanted to get away from governments and powerful institutions and banks. And I think perhaps his original vision was that a small number of people would engage in this, and they would all be able to make payments to each other without accounting to anybody. I don't know that he necessarily envisaged what Bitcoin has become today.
What do you think it's become?
So Bitcoin today has a market cap of $690 billion. It's maintained, there are people maintaining huge warehouses full of computers, making the whole system run in obscure parts of China and Russia and Iceland, and I guess some parts of America and Canada as well. So they're mining the currency. Each individual, again, I don't know if Satoshi necessarily envisaged that people would trade Bitcoin against the dollar and that it would reach the heights that it's reached today. So like it peaked a few months ago at $60,000 per Bitcoin. And, so you asked me, why is it that people aren't transacting with it? And I think it's really difficult to transact with something that maybe 10 years ago was worth $600 and now is worth 60,000. Today it's worth 35,000.
Well, I'm going to go on to that, but I just want to get to the nuts and bolts. Explain to me, how many Bitcoins are out there in the world?
Okay, it's an ever increasing quantity. All right. So what happens is we talked about these blocks. So a block contains transactions, and one of those gets produced every 10 minutes.
Okay.
And every time you produce one, you create another 6.5 Bitcoin.
6.5 Bitcoin. And I hope that the block isn't triggered by minutes. I hope it's triggered by trade. Because it would be kind of silly.
No, it's triggered by minutes. So the target is to produce a block every 10 minutes, irrespective of how many people want to stick transactions in there.
So, yeah, because this is I've got my economics hat on here, but I've also got my kind of common sense hat on here. So this is a currency or a form of payment which is related to, or its creation is related to the calendar.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And so let me tell you about a clever part of this, right?
Yeah.
There's a thing called the Bitcoin halving. So initially, every time a block was created, I think it was 20 it started off, or 20 Bitcoin was created. But then every 4 years or so, that figure halves. Okay, so let's say after the first 4 years, it was 10 every 10 minutes. And then after the next 4 years, it's 5 every 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And this keeps halving. And the idea is that this halving will continue up to, I think it's around 2040 is the predicted time. And at that point, there will be no more Bitcoin created.
Okay, so let's do a bit of maths here, right?
Yeah.
How many Bitcoin then will be created by 2040 based on this?
21 million.
21 million. Okay, so that's the magic figure. Okay.
And that's the cap.
Okay. Yeah. And at the moment, how many million are out there, do we think?
I guess it's a little bit over 50%. I'm just guessing there.
Yeah, that's just the basic maths. Okay,
yeah.
So there's about 11 odd million out there, and we're going to get to 21 million, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's the gold idea, that it is actually some sort of hard relationship. This is a relationship to an algorithm. Gold is a relationship, unfortunately, to geology, wherever the world actually bequeathed us, and eventually you run out of that stuff. Okay, good. Now I'm beginning to get the whole thing. So there's 21 million. Right. Now, you mentioned the other thing, Donald, there I thought was interesting. You said initially it was kind of a libertarian, anti-government thing. Because when I talk to Bitcoiners, I always get a sense that one side, there are kind of enthusiastic computer programmers who see a technology that solves a problem, which is to reduce the middleman and get the internet functioning more smoothly. On the other hand, then I get these sort of libertarian characters who tie up Bitcoin with an anti-establishment, anti-government, small government in many ways, libertarian worldview. And sometimes the two of them are kind of behind Bitcoin, but from very, very different philosophical angles. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and I certainly, if you look at the two extremes of this, so one is where you're using it as a coin, as a medium of exchange, which I think was probably the original vision of Satoshi Nakamoto. So in that case, perhaps you're interested in libertarian type ideas and you're saying, well, no one should be interfering with my payment. No one should be stopping my payment. No one should be taking fees on my payment, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. But then you look at the other extreme, which is this thing is just like gold, which is a much more recent idea. And at that stage, maybe you're not too concerned about things like privacy and so on. You're really just concerned with the fact it's scarcity is the big thing that you're honing in on.
Yeah, and it's going up in value.
This rate, people have subsequently called it the inflation rate of Bitcoin. But, to know that it's kind of all this halving is going on, and then there's a hard cap of 21 million. So all the digital gold guys are just focused in primarily on that property, and they don't care too much about the anonymity or the lack of a middleman or whatever.
Sure. Okay. Can I also ask you about, you're a crypto expert, right? Tell me about all the other coins that are knocking around. So Bitcoin is one, and as you said, it's the kind of granddaddy, right?
Yeah.
What else is going on?
Well, so Bitcoin introduced this notion of the distributed consensus.
What is that?
So that's where you've got a ledger of transactions, and you don't need the trusted third party like the bank or whatever to maintain it. Instead, it's maintained by a ton of nodes out there on the internet, just all working away trying to solve puzzles. Okay, the Bitcoin mining idea.
Okay.
So subsequent to Bitcoin being launched, maybe a few years afterwards, people started to coin the phrase blockchain. And then they started to think, well, this could be used for all sorts of things. So first of all, you could make different coins, all right, for perhaps different purposes. And second of all, you could use it for doing things like perhaps betting on a horse, for example, or writing an insurance policy, or there's a whole lot of things that you could disintermediate by having a blockchain. So perhaps maybe the second most important coin, well, maybe I wouldn't even call it that. You could say it's the most important. So Bitcoin has its niche now, and I think that niche is kind of in the digital gold. Ethereum came along a little bit afterwards, and it added a whole lot of capability. So it used the basic idea of this distributed consensus, but it also meant that you could create these things called smart contracts. A good example is, if you look at a Coke machine sitting in a corridor,
Yep.
Soft drinks machine, you go along to that, you insert a coin, you press a button, and you expect certain things to happen. Okay, so you can think about that as almost like a robot that's programmed to deliver things. You put in some money, something good happens.
Yeah.
In a smart contract, you can do that out on the blockchain. You can put a piece of code out in the blockchain that executes something. So let's say I want to place a bet on a horse. I could go along to this machine in the corridor and I could say, I want to bet on horse number 2 in the 3:30, and the machine would record the bet. And then later on, I could come back and press a different button and say, I'm the guy who placed that bet. Can you give me my winnings now?
Okay, so you're saying that there could be at a certain stage. I mean, you're talking about the end of shopping. You're talking about the end of shops. You're talking about the end of all these sort of ideas.
Well, almost anything you can think of that needs somebody who perhaps isn't adding that much value, just to sort of match a buyer and a seller.
There's no crack in this world, Donald. This is a world taken over by bloody computer programmers and scientists and things. The whole point, the interaction, the flirt, the whole idea. But John, you had a question there. Well, John's love is up here. He's like if you're Cadigan Dullamaka the Lehrers led all.
Please, sir, please. Donald, just go back to I'm having trouble with this cap at 21 million.
Yeah.
Who decided that and why? And then the follow-up question is, with the other new coins like Ethereum and Dogecoin and all those, did they have a cap as well?
Yeah, well, okay, so who makes the rules in this blockchain world? So I guess, Satoshi laid down the kind of foundations in his white paper, and he talked about that notion of the halving and so on. But, I guess what really enforces that is the code that people use to implement Bitcoin. And there's a set of people who look after that. And they would have sort of fine-tuned the rules. So, and I guess the question is, can you change the rules then?
Yeah.
And you could, if you could get every single person who was running that code, all the miners that are out there, and you got them all to come into a room and agree, well, it's not going to be 21 million, it's going to be 25 million. If you could get that all to happen, then yeah, you could change it to 25 million.
I bet you that's going to happen. I bet you that's going to happen. No, seriously, you're talking about human nature here. I bet you that is going to happen.
But why have a cap in the first place?
To make it scarce, to give it some anchor of value. Otherwise, you keep mining, and then it's like, because the Bitcoiners are always going on. The Fed is an inflationary machine. It's printing this money's going out of value, and their counter argument is our money can't go out of value because it's got this cap on it. But
as well as that, I guess you're giving birth to a new currency here, right? So you can't just take all the coins and whoosh them out there. Who would you give them to? Right. So,
but you see, I'm somebody who believes that money is ubiquitous. And actually, the economist in me, Donald, doesn't get the fascinating thing about money is its power is social. The more money out there, the more unbelievably powerful it is as a technology. If you tie money to some sort of crazy thing like the amount of gold that was fortuitously deposited in various different tectonic movements millions of years ago, you're tethering human ability to a geological fact, which in my head makes no sense. And therefore, this is my problem with Bitcoin. It's not a problem. It's a more of a philosophical idea. Why make it scarce if it's any good? Because scarcity has only got value when you move into the world of, high art and gold, actually things that people hoard, they don't use. And what, for me, the beauty of money is we use it and it brings us together and it's a fantastic technology. That's my philosophical dilemma. But that's maybe something that
Yeah, but I think we're dealing with currencies of today, like the dollar and the euro and stuff, that have taken years to come on board, and their supply is steadily and ever growing. But if you took the current stock of euro right now, just doubled it tomorrow, it would be a fiasco, right?
Well, yeah, it would be not a fiasco. That's the interesting thing, is that what we have been doing, in the last, this is what the Bitcoiners will always say, like in the last 18 months, $1 out of every 5 that is actually in print has been printed. So there's been a massive potential inflationary increase. And as a consequence, then that's what makes Bitcoin attractive, because it has the scarcity value.
And people have actually done lots of models on this based on exactly what you said. So there's the issuance rate of Bitcoin, and this is the stuff that's coming 6 every 10 minutes. But there's also the retirement rate of Bitcoin, which is just as you alluded to, people losing it, people locking it up and, no longer having access to it. So the currency kind of loses a certain amount over time. And ideally what you want is some kind of a balance between the new coins coming into circulation and the old ones leaving.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the maths of it, right? If the Fed were to be producing dollars at the rate of which it is doing now, and if Bitcoin was a diminishing asset in terms of scarcity, and we decide that it's not really a currency, it's an asset, right? Let's do that. Well, then we can actually figure out where Bitcoin could get to in terms of its relation to the dollar. It could be a phenomenally expensive asset and a phenomenally worthwhile asset. I mean, have people done the modeling that says the Bitcoin, if it is going to be related to the amount of dollars out there, and if the amount of dollars out there increases exponentially, then the price of Bitcoin has to increase exponentially? I mean, have your guys done all the modeling on that, the computer programmers?
Well, I think the value of Bitcoin is kind of a balance of supply and demand. And in Bitcoin's case, the supply is known. So about the so many every 10 minutes, and about the halving, and about the cap of 21 million. What's not known is the supply, right? And the supply is very much geared by market sentiment and who's interested in things. And when you get people like, I don't know, Paul Tudor Jones, and most recently Elon Musk has been having a huge impact on the price. Okay, so he's made a decision that basically it's a sensible thing for anyone money under management to do, to take a small amount of those assets, 2, 3, 7 or 8% in his case, and invest that in Bitcoin. So this massively increases the supply, which massively increases the price.
Tell me, what's your sense of crypto over the next 10 years? I mean, again, from your perspective, let's go back to where we started, that it is a technology that could enable the internet to work better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the amazing things it's just amazing to work in the field, because there's so many really clever ideas and so many very, very smart people around. And, it enables a huge number of things. So, I mean, obviously payment is one of them, but people are using it now I guess it's having the most impact initially in finance. So there's a whole new world called decentralized finance going on. And again, that's looking at things that people have historically done in conventional finance and just try and take the center out of it. So people have traded cryptocurrencies, for example, for years. And typically you need brokers to do that, and you need accounts, and there's lots and lots of friction. Today, you can go out to a blockchain, you can just push some money into a smart contract in one form and get it out in another form. So now, so the assets that are being traded right now are typically crypto assets. So you could sort of push in one Bitcoin and get out perhaps maybe 30 Ethereums, something like that. And that's an exchange. Yeah. But then you start to see people developing new tokens on the blockchain that actually represent real world assets. So there are things called stable coins, which are coins just like Bitcoin is a coin, but they're designed so that the value of them is pegged at $1 or pegged at €1 or pegged at a renminbi, or as the case may be. And if you then take two of those stable coin assets, let's say one representing $1 and one representing €1, you could do euro-dollar exchange on the blockchain. No humans involved, instant transaction, tiny settlement fees, usually 0.03% on each individual transaction. And, this sort of thing has been creeping up over the last year and a half. And now you've got, I think it's $60 billion locked in assets in DeFi platforms, mostly to do with currency exchange.
Now,
so the first thing they tackled was payment. Second thing is an awful lot of financial things in DeFi, and there's lots more coming, I think.
Finally, I just want to ask you then, Donald, if we're seeing, you've got skeptics, you've got evangelists. I've always said, a lot of these, when you get moments of disruption, it's always very good to go back to the Reformation, right? And you see that, so Martin Luther's on one side, right? And Martin Luther's saying, listen, lads, I've got this new direct line to God. And the Pope is saying, no, hold on a second. Now you get the 30 Years' War, you get the Holy Roman Empire collapsing, you get all these good stuff happening, right? Well, not good stuff, obviously, if you're hanging around Germany, the 30 Years' War isn't a good thing, right? And then you get schisms within the revolutionaries. So you get Methodists and Calvinists and Anglicans and Presbyterians and all that sort of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it recalibrates, it resettles, and the old world does disappear. The old world does change profoundly. Using that analogy, thinking about finance, are we looking at a world where banks disappear? They just go. They're regarded as kind of anachronistic. They're like steam engines. They're like things that were essential to the function of the democracy and the economy, and then technology just overwhelms them.
Well, I don't think it's going to be something that happens overnight, but we are absolutely seeing erosion. So we were seeing this blockchain thing, which started off as a kind of a weird computer hacker thing 10 years ago, and is now, as I said, $690 billion is the market cap of Bitcoin. And that's just Bitcoin. There's lots of other ones. I mentioned the $60 billion locked in DeFi. So this thing is gathering momentum. Now, of course, you mentioned the Methodists and the Calvinists and whatever. So, you can see people like Warren Buffett, who thinks that Bitcoin is just an abomination. His sidekick, Charlie Munger, said it's disgusting. You've got people like Elon Musk who are, the future, and they believe in Bitcoin. You've got other people who think that all currency should be abandoned in favor of this. So, there's a whole spectrum of views out there. But the direction of travel is pretty clear, right? And it's not going Warren Buffett's way.
I think we will leave it there, Donald. That was fascinating stuff. Donald O'Mahony, the man who actually didn't deny that he isn't Satoshi Nakamoto. I'm just...
Well, indeed.
Oh, this is Donald. That was great. Thanks a million.
Right, great. Thanks a million. Cheers, David.
So what you have is, the way you hear that people say that Apple have an inbuilt obsolescence in their iPhones?
Yes.
That at certain stages, what is triggered is a gradual decrepitude in the battery.
Decrepitude?
Good word.
Ooh, I like that.
In the battery, right? So do you remember a thing called, differential calculus when we were in school?
Oh, I do.
Right? The dy/dx stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was basically all about how you
I don't know what it was about, actually.
Okay.
But I do remember.
Yeah, but I remember it. So basically, it was a sense in which you could there was an incremental change going towards zero in maths,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
This is the same idea. So they've built into the Bitcoin an algorithm that is gradually going towards zero, that is halving every time, as Donald says, they increase some quantity, right?
Yeah. It's like radiation. It's the half-life of molecules.
Is that what it is, John?
Yes.
Jesus, wept.
There you go.
Tell you, chemistry and all that stuff. So basically what it is, it's an inbuilt obsolescence that will make Bitcoin disappear at 21 million coins. And this is why the liquid or the digital gold people are suggesting that it has this capacity because it has scarcity built into it. But I would, and I think that's fine.
Yeah,
so
but
that means it's an asset. That means it's not money.
To be hoarded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you make anything, if you make the attraction of anything, it's scarcity.
Yeah.
Then your natural tendency is not to spend it.
Yeah.
It's to hoard it.
Yes, of course.
And therefore it can't really become money, because money's beauty is that we don't hoard it, that we actually accept it to such an extent that we don't say, you see that €10 in my arse pocket? It's going to be worth a little bit more next year or tomorrow. so I'm not going to spend it. And that would, if we stopped spending the euros and started treating them like bitcoins, the whole system would actually gum up.
Yeah.
And what money's essential alchemy is that it manages to walk this tightrope between value and use. Value and use.
Yeah.
So we know it as a value, but it's not sufficiently valuable that we hoard it. And we also know that when we put down the 10 euros, we get back something in return.
Yeah.
And that's something in return. We have accepted the notion of value.
Yeah.
This is this idea that money is like religion.
Yes.
But basically, it's a huge fabrication of our imagination. Maybe the most amazing fabrication that humans have ever come up with. Because what we've managed to do with money, I was actually thinking about yesterday walking on the street. I mean, you walk on the street in Dunleary and there's all these hundreds of people walking around and doing their thing and shopping and not shopping, or having a drink, not having a drink, walking around. And you think, what is the organizational mechanism of modern societies? Because it's not politics.
Yeah.
It's not the army. It's not the police force. It's not democracy. It's not the education system. It's money.
Yeah.
And it's an amazingly organizational technology that we all buy into, and we've bought into over. Like, I believe that money is the story of modernity.
Yeah.
That there's basically two phases in human development. There's development before money and there's development now.
Yeah.
And what always happens in money, and this is the great thing about monetary history, is at every stage there's a conflict between who prints it and who uses it. And this, I think, is part of an age-old, century-old dilemma. So even if you go back to let's say the Dark Ages, the medieval ages, right? Money was essentially what they call specie, which is silver or gold.
Right.
So this is the idea of, it was digital gold. It was like a Bitcoin, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you get these Venetians and the Medicis in Florence. They started issuing what they call letters of credit between merchants. And this was like a parallel currency. So basically it said, John is good for 20 quid because I'll underwrite, like writing a check,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like John will write the check and I'll balance the check and I'll clear the check, right? And suddenly what you got was this conflict between the merchant class that were creating the letters of credit, which was actually modern money,
Yeah.
and the king who owned the mint, who was actually printing the gold and putting his own fucking head in it,
Right.
saying, I'm the boss man. And he said, and I'm the boss man and I pay the soldiers and I run the kip, right? The merchants were saying, that's all cool, but the last thing we want to be doing is going from Italy to Germany, right? Trading up the Rhone and down the
Yeah.
Rhine and carrying bags of gold.
Yeah.
In order for me to pay John Davis.
Yeah. There was a practical element to this.
So basically I said, look, I've done business with John Davis for a while. He's a bit of a rogue, I wouldn't really trust him, but he's all right for the money, right? What I'll do is I'll accept a check from John. And I know he's good for it. And what we did was we created a parallel money. And then suddenly that becomes more refined in the 16th century, in the 18th century, 19th century, right? And then you see what we call modern money, which is paper money emerging, which is basically the Bank of England was
Sure.
the first, right? And the idea...
Fiat money.
Fiat money. So they think about the idea, it's our friends, the Dutch as well, and that the idea that not only will John not have to give me a bag of gold, but he's going to give me a piece of paper
Yeah.
that I am going to trust him so much that I am going to pretend in my head is equal to a bag of gold, right?
Yeah.
So suddenly, what I'm saying is all these innovations are part of the process
So
of money.
what's the difference then between, you're talking about the guy who owns the mint, who prints the money, are the miners then the same as the printers?
Well,
in that sense.
In that sense, well, I mean, the miners, and again, it's a very interesting because the word, the dollar.
Yeah.
The dollar comes from the German word thaler. The term like Rosenthal, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Thal means valley, right?
Right.
And of course, what valleys were always the sources of mines, right? It's at the base of mountains.
Okay, right, yeah.
And the thaler was a Czech currency. In the 14th and 15th century, there was huge silver mines in Bohemia, and they were called thaler mines, right? And that's where the dollar comes from.
Yeah.
So there's always been a connection, you're right, between the mine
Yeah.
and the king. So the mine would extract the silver, and then that would set the limit on the amount of coins in the mint. And the king would come along, pay the miner, but not the same amount. This is what they call seigniorage in economics, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Not the same amount, but he'd say, like, I'll take 100 quid worth of silver from you. You'd say, fair enough, I'll take 100 quid, or 100 gold pieces.
Yeah.
And then he'd print 200 bits of silver, right?
Right.
That's how he inflated and made his money.
Right.
Okay. And that's the way. So you're right, but the Bitcoin thing suggests that the mines can't be hoodwinked by the king, right? And if you think about huge amounts of political conflict all the way down throughout the years, has been the king trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the punters by devaluing the currency. The two great debasers, Nero and Henry VIII, both called the great debasers, because they were always taking gold out of the coin, right, and putting in now shitey bits of copper, things like that, trying to get away with it, like spoofers, right? And Bitcoin is supposed to take the King Henry VIII weakness out of the system, right? And of course, what they look at, they would say Nero was always a great man for debasing the Roman coin, right? The denari, from dinar, the Serb currency, or dinero. No dinero, when the Spanish have no money.
Yeah.
It comes from the dinar, from the Latin.
It actually, the whole thing, and the way Donald was speaking there, it feels like there's a lot of contradictions. They have the cap of 21 million.
In 2040.
In 2040. But is that only applying to Bitcoin? What about Ethereum? What about, you could start up any old coin. Anybody can start a
coin. Mickey Mouse coin. Macker coin.
Macker coin.
Jeez, would be great. Start with them.
But, we could do that. And we don't have to have a cap at all.
I suspect it might be quite a debased currency. I'm not too sure. Imagine going around to Arthur McKenna and saying, Arthur, can we have a few pints of stout, please?
Yeah, I'm good for it,
I'm good for it. I've got my own coin in my arse pocket.
I've got fluff in my pocket.
Exactly. But there is a thing in economics, in monetary economics, called Gresham's law. And Gresham's law states, and this is kind of intrinsic to Bitcoin and all these coins, right? Gresham's law always states that bad money will drive out good money. Right. Now, this comes from years and years ago where counterfeiting was really the norm. There was a thing called scraping. So you'd put all the gold coins together and you'd yank them up and down, and get the little scrapey bits of gold off them. And you take all those scrapes of gold and melt that down into another coin, right?
Oh, right, okay.
So it is the history of coinage, the history of money has been always the weakness for debasing the currency, for actually making a currency worse than it is, and then trying to pass that off as good stuff. Even, remember I was talking about Dante many years ago, right?
Which time was that?
Well, there's a great character in Dante called Adam the Debaser. And poor old Adam the Debaser was a geezer in Dante, right? Who Dante reserved the 9th circle of hell for the counterfeiter of the florin, because he thought to undermine the florin was to undermine the system. And some poor geezer called Adam was a counterfeiter who was snared in Florence, and he goes into the...
What happened to him? Was he?
He was burnt at the stake, the poor lad. Yeah. But much worse.
That's a bit harsh.
In the Inferno, Dante puts Adam, the counterfeiter, together with the guy who betrayed the Trojans in the Trojan horse of Greece. Okay, whose name escapes me, but there was a geezer, right, in the annals who convinced the Trojans that the horse was actually a gift from the Greeks, knowing full well the Greek army was in the belly of the horse. And then in the middle of the night, when the Trojans were all locked because they thought they'd won the war, out come the Greeks. So the betrayal...
Was that not Achilles?
It wasn't Achilles, no, it was another geezer. The betrayal of the Trojans was seen as Dante as bad as betraying the currency by debasing it. And he had Adam in the down there in the bowels of the earth, suffering all his life.
So debasing was a kind of a treasonous act.
It was an unbelievable treason. And of course, the great thing about Dante was the foulness of the language, the besmirching, and he used to talk about puss and shit and piss and people swallowing things and all sorts of carry-on. Great stuff, right? All right. But let's come back to Gresham's law.
But just before you do that, but that is the whole point of cryptocurrencies, is that there is no...
That they're purer than the coin.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you have a physical item, be it a coin or a banknote or whatever, that can be counterfeited.
And what the cryptos people are saying, it will be counterfeited. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
But then if you take Gresham's law, this is the inherent contradiction, right? Gresham's law means bad money drives out good money. So money that is being debased, right? Like what the Bitcoiners will talk about, the dollar being overproduced or the euro being overproduced. That will then be used in day-to-day transactions because people were trying to pass it off. They want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas the good money, the Bitcoiners say, will be hoarded. But the contradiction, therefore, is that Bitcoin can never become money. It can only become hoarded. There's an intellectual fallacy at the center of it, which is to do with Gresham's law in economics. And the reason that central banks came in and legal tender came in and the sense of a state trying to manage the idea was that throughout the history of money, as people tried to debase money, the good money got hoarded in gold coins and was made valuable and was sort of kept for good, and the bad money was used. And ultimately, then the bad money became inflationary. So the reason we have all sorts of monetary organizations is to make sure that our good money doesn't become bad.
Yeah.
But what the Bitcoiners have said is that the whole elixir of Bitcoin is Gresham's law. But that then argues profoundly against Bitcoin ever becoming money, which is cool because it's an asset.
Yeah.
But the Bitcoiners themselves have staked some of their philosophical or revolutionary or anti-establishment, if you will, credence on the fact that what is happening is there is a revolution in money going on and the power is ceded from the corrupt state to the virtual Bitcoiners. And that story, in my opinion, is a very, very hard circle to square.
Okay. What we need to do now is we need to get the flip side of the coin, as it were.
Oh, I like that, John.
So on Thursday, we're going to be speaking to Katie Martin of the FT, who's going to give us the other side of the coin.
Absolutely. And she's going to talk to us about what is happening in the market, the various different tribes, and ultimately where this thing goes. So back on Thursday. John.
Yes.
Oh, I like that. Where did that come from?
Deep down.
Is that your Barry White?
Deep down.
Is that your John as Barry White? We're going to play out with Lucy and Chameleon, i.e. Matthew, the fella you say. What's his name?
The guy with the head.
The guy with the heads. New track called Who Knows.
You say you don't even know my name, but it's yours that's swimming in my head every day. You say you don't even know my name, but it's yours that's swimming in my brain every day.
Leave it at the door, I'll ignore it if you talk it up. Faded pain, what you're saying, there's no reason I should hear it out. Falling back in the black, this oblivion is all it's on. And when I see you leave, I know I don't need you there.
I don't need you there.
I don't need you there.
I don't need you there. Yeah, I don't need you there.
I don't need you
that swimming in my head.